Blackouts. Damn, it's good! So, it's the first time we have you on the show. I mean it. It's such a huge honor. So, for people that don't recognize you, who the hell are you, man?
How do they not recognize my voice, or is there some video that I don't know that you have planted in my house?
I didn't, but maybe they don't recognize your voice.
Well, that's fine. I'm John Jughead Pierson out of Chicago, Illinois.
John, I mean it. I'm doing the radio show since many years, and to have somebody that forged the history of Chicago punk and the whole history of the USA and playing around the world, it's fun to have you. There's so much to talk about. But I'm curious, let's go at the beginning. How you started up with music, how music came up to your life, and what your parents were listening to when you grew up. Did that any influence on you?
Mostly my mother. My father was mostly absent from the house at a young age, so my mother had this old radio console, and we used to listen to a lot of acoustic music together. Actually, like Cat Stevens and Donovan and people like that. But she also liked Aerosmith. I always thought that was really cool that she liked Aerosmith. So. That was but most of my influences that I got directly were from my older brother, who's like 6 years older than me. His room was full of pot smoke and like Circus magazine posters, and I used to go in there like every day and borrow cassettes from him. So that was probably the biggest influence on me.
That's cool, because I was the older brother, so my brother did that, but sometimes he messed up my cassettes or screw it up, and I'm like, you broke that cassette, do you know how rare it is? No, I didn't know. I just want to give it a try.
Yeah, this is funny. My brother and I used to have battles. I think I talked about this somewhere, but I lived in the basement, and I had a window at the basement level, and he was on the top. And he took a cassette of mine, like stole it. I didn't even know it. And then me and my friend heard a crash, and he had actually thrown his cassette player out the window, and it smashed on the ground with my like Queen cassette in there. So when he wasn't home, I took all of the tape out of it and wound it around his whole room inside, like all around all the furniture and the lamps, and it looked like it was like a cassette spider web.
That's so cool. So, you start listening to music, and what was the first instrument that you chose? How did you became trying different instrument, or did you just play one instrument?
Yeah, no, to be honest, I didn't really start playing seriously until me and Ben started Screeching Weasel around '87. But I had a mandolin, and I used to play mandolin. I used to write stupid little songs on mandolin when I was younger. And the irony is that I just came off a tour a few years ago, a Broadway tour, playing mandolin in a show, so it paid off.
Wow, it's like the circle of life, you put it somewhere, and I will never play it again, and it came back to your life.
Yeah, Hakuna Matata.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You did so much thing, and I love having people that in their career, they open all the door. They didn't stop to just doing a thing, and a lot of people stop and restrain themselves just doing a thing or not doing anything, just working. And you did a lot. Actor, you wrote a lot. Is it something that you started up young as listening to music, or you just had some opportunities and you took them?
Well, I think I don't know. At the core of it, I try to think about this sometimes. It comes from what some would see as a negative thing, that my family sort of exploded when I was about 5 or 6, and my brothers and sisters who were older than me, there was 5 of us, were kind of going through rebellious stages because their father wasn't around, and my mom didn't have time to actually pay much attention to me and my younger sister besides loving us whenever she could. So we didn't really have any direction. Like, if someone asked me the question, what do you want to be when you're older, I had no idea. So luckily there was something driven in me that just made that into a living instead of doing nothing.
And you did a lot instead of doing nothing, and that's cool because I think life has so much opportunity. Sometimes we close some door because we think, oh, I ain't gonna be good. I never thought acting, but when you took and you just say yes, sometimes it brings a lot of positive, things around you, and you just keep going, and you realize, oh, I've been doing that for that many years.
Yeah, I think I've never really been able to. Some people have that. I've run into a lot of musicians, and they'll write something, and then they'll question themselves on whether it's good enough. And I never really had that. I just put it out there no matter what. And if it failed, I kept going on. If it was good, then I'd keep doing that.
Yeah. And that's cool. And, I think a lot of people are afraid of doing something that, people going to dislike and it's out there forever. But I think it's always the next thing.
Yeah, I think this is something I learned later that I was probably already doing as a kid. But to me, it was always more of a process. So going, whether it's theater or writing or music or interviewing, to me, it's all part of the same process of just, becoming what I am in the moment.
Yeah, wow. We're deep tonight. When you join...
Well, I'm in my little basement room, so I get kind of deep in the basement.
Oh, that's cool.
Literally.
But it's real. It's you're right, as human beings sometimes we just stop ourselves or restrain like I mentioned, but when you just choose to go and you don't care, at some points you achieve, more than you think that you can.
Yeah. I would say the one thing that you possibly could give up, depending on your own inherent talent, is you kind of give up on being the best at something, which because my talents are all over the place, I don't really have the time to become the best at any one thing.
Yeah. And the expectation that you have too, some people just put the level too high.
Can you explain yourself?
When you think you start a band and you're going to be the biggest band out there and the ego and everything.
Oh, yeah.
In the way. But, when you started up with Screeching Weasel, there was not really any expectation outside of just playing and having fun.
Oh, no, there wasn't. But, I would say that was the culmination of timing and, because all those bands in Berkeley, we hooked up at them and it all just sort of happened around at the same time. And it also had to do with having two people, me and Ben, that were pretty driven, more driven than most artists I knew at the time.
Yeah, that gave up really fast when it was really rough.
Yeah, or just don't even have the instinct to leave your own town. A lot of bands just sort of die and decay because they play to the same audience every week after week.
Yeah, a lot of bands stay local. It's true.
Yeah.
So, when you started up, there was excitement at that time in punk rock because, like you said, there was not really expectation out there for anyone. How was the scene when you started up directly in Chicago? Berkeley was going great, but was there a lot of kids out there? Was it something in the air?
Well, there was a big difference between being a suburban kid and a Chicago person back then. You had Naked Ray Gun and Effigies and people like that were gravitated towards the city, and which was an over 21 crowd, and we were teenagers in the suburbs, so we were they kind of joined, they kind of let us in, but it didn't feel the same, so we just created our own scene. So I would say we didn't create it out of nothing. There were other bands around, like Apocalypse Hoboken and other bands of that ilk, like Gage, my friend Gub's band. But we were all sort of in our own little pockets. Same with Vapid, with his early bands. And then I think me and Ben and my friend Matt were kind of the ones that kind of grabbed everyone from here and there and centralized it more, I think.
Yeah, because, in the 70s, there was New York, there was San Francisco, but then people were thinking about California. But when you look at it, there was really a lot of amount of band just everywhere out there, and it was those old little scene that brings something, not just a scene or just a part at that time.
Yeah, I think ours, I don't always like to talk in scenes, but I mean there was a lot of different things going on. There was the material issue, and there was that whole sort of heroin sort of influenced Wicker Park scene, and there was our punk scene brewing at Fireside and places like that. And the old school guys, like I said, like Naked Raygun, were still affecting and influencing a lot of people.
Yeah, and it's so interesting, when drugs came to the scene and everything, it really destroyed a part of it. But when you look at it now, it's so different. You see like that new generation of kids that are very more wealthy, than our generation that didn't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think each scene that hops into the mainstream you're gonna have that influx of people with money, because they, that's what they're driven by. So they go to wherever that's possible.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. And then music is a niche.
Yeah.
So, when you were in Screeching Weasel, did you have that acting thing going on, and it was just full-time touring and everything, and you didn't have time? When it came to you?
I had a 1-for-1 ratio going for quite a while, where I would record one record, and then on tour I would write a play, and then I would get home and produce that play, and then while it was going on I would go back on the road and we'd do another record. So I was 1-for-1 for about, I think it was up to 10 records and 10 plays, and then they started taking on their own lives.
Wow!
But they were simultaneous. In the real world, they were simultaneous. If you talk about high school, I was doing theater my junior and senior year, but I wasn't doing any music. So I would, if you're talking about like history, I probably started with theater first.
Wow, it's amazing. I did little when I was in high school and college, but still I love it. And when I got times I want to go see, a new act and everything. And it's cool that, you did that discipline of doing the studio. I thought it was right after because, it's a huge amount of work after all.
Yeah.
And to find the balance and sleep well and not just thinking about, the act and after just thinking about the record.
Yeah, well, you didn't sleep much back then. I often talk about there was a period, it wasn't too long, but it was about like 6 months where I had 3 jobs where I would wake up at, I had a coffee cafe job from 9 to 5, and then I would walk across the parking lot to a movie theater from like 6 to midnight, and then this construction guy would come pick me up, and I would work on carpeting in theaters all night, and I did that for like 6 months, and I didn't sleep at all. And we raised, basically me and Ben were raising money to go on tours and recording records, because we paid for our first 3 or 4 just outright records.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's totally dedication. But at the end, it really pay off because, those records and that period of time, bring a lot of memories to so many people. And there's way more people now listening to it because with the internet and music platform and everything. But that's crazy when you think about it that, the struggle behind that, people don't realize it at those times. But now I think people are more aware of what it involved to be in a band.
Yeah, it's funny because I'm right now. I've been hired to audiobook my Weasels in a Box book, and I got to a chapter about how I talk about when John Peel played our song in London, and then we got a record deal in England. And me and Ben were like, "What the hell is this all about?" We've sold like 1,000 records in America, and that's like where we thought it would end.
But that's so cool. And you wrote a novel in 2005 about the universe of Screeching Weasel.
Yeah, that's what I was just referring to. Yeah, it's called Weasels in a Box. Yeah, it was done in the second person, which I don't recommend anybody pursuing. It's a headache. It took me about 7 years to complete.
I'm curious. I know what you meant, but I think people, when you start to read up a couple of lines, you get to it. After a couple of pages, you get it. But yeah, it's a tough structure to comprehend with the brain the first time.
Yeah, and I'm actually struggling with it now as turning into an audiobook because there's a lot more voices going on, and two of my own voices, the you and the I. So it's I'm reliving that whole complication of the 7 years it took to write it.
Wow. It's like when you finish, it's done. Okay, I'm done with it. And a couple of years later, I'm back to the man.
Yeah, there's a theater guy. I don't know if you know much about theater, but the Samuel Beckett who did Waiting for Godot, and he was obsessed with doing all his own translations and almost all the directing. He was very specific and anal about everything, and it kind of drove him nuts after a while because he stopped creating because he was like doing the French version and the German version and and keeping track of everybody. You got to let go. You got to let go at some point.
Yeah, I think so. And it's a good thing. It's kind of a good problem to let go. It's because it grows so big that you cannot handle it at that point. Oh, you get crazy. That's a choice.
Yeah. Well, unless you've already started out crazy.
So you wrote a lot in your life. Is it something that came naturally, or is it something that you don't force, but is it kind of it came, it's a flow, and then you're done, or it's a discipline and you write a lot even when you don't want?
Yeah. I think writing is my favorite thing to do, but also the hardest one. It really is difficult, and I love authors like John Updike and Somerset Maugham, who are like word aficionados. They know exactly what they're saying and how to say it. I come from more of the school of the struggling to understand. So I'm trying to understand what's in my head, and then I sit there and pound the paper for hours and hours and hours just to get a sentence out right.
Wow.
But playwriting is a little bit different for me because something about dialogue just makes it more natural to me. Like I can start rattling off people's voices easier than I can painting a scene.
Yeah, and with guitar, is it the same thing, or is it another process?
It depends on which bands. Like even in Blackouts, I would take forever and ever and ever to write a song because I wanted each song to be its own thing and come from influences that are things that I'm learning. So those have to be a lot more intentional. Whereas like my newer band, Mitochondriacs, it's more about come up with an idea, sit down, hash it out quick, introduce it to the band, record it, and move on. So it depends on what project I'm working on.
Oh, cool. So when did you start up that new band?
During the pandemic, it was about, I think, I don't know, time is so strange these days. Yeah. I think it was, I would say it was about a year and a half ago. I don't know for sure. Right in front of me, I don't know.
Yeah, you seem to have a really strong timeline, and with the pandemic, it fucked up my timeline so bad.
Yeah, I really have to look at paper now to sort of understand my timeline, or Wikipedia or something, or Discogs to understand my life.
Wiki, learn me something about me, please.
Yeah. Well, I'll call up the obsessed fans and just ask them questions about myself. Like, where was I in 1995? Well, John, that's when you recorded.
And is it surprising you, since Screeching Weasel have so much fans that they really dig everything from, everything you've done, like every record, asking question about the songs and everything. It's something it can be kind of surreal, with the time because, like I said, when you started up, you don't have any expectation of having tons of fans and getting there, many years later.
Yeah. Well, in the working of the band, I mean, to be honest, I was lucky. I didn't have to be the voice of the band. Ben did that since he wrote most of the stuff. So I did all the business work, the accounting, the wrangling of the band members and the management. So I didn't really experience that more until Even in Blackouts, and by then I was ready to talk about everything. So I really enjoyed it.
Wow, yeah. And I feel you, sometimes it's something, personal that you just, I just move on from that.
Yeah. I'm still not very comfortable about talking about songs of Screeching Weasel, even though I'm intimate with them. But I didn't, I'm not the writer of them, so I don't feel like I'm coming from a place of complete genuineness when I discuss a song.
I feel you, and as a musician, I'm sure that you don't live in the past and live forward the next thing, the next project.
Yeah, but I am one of those that I really do like listening and talking about the things that I have done. I always think there's things to glean from looking into the past, just as long as you don't get stuck there,
Yeah, like a lot of fans.
yeah. I kind of learned that lesson like out of high school when I started realizing, me and Ben hit the road, and I'd come back and I'd see people I knew from high school gravitating towards like bars that are like a block away from high school, and not really going. Their lives were happy, they had families and stuff, but it just wasn't my thing. So I immediately became pretty aware of being productive and getting out there.
Yeah, and it's cool because not a lot of people understand that about life, and a lot of people struggle because they don't create, they don't try thing, and I think that when you do that, it really opens a lot of door mentally, and it's like, it's a therapy, and John, since day one, you've been a therapist for so many people through your act, through the writing, and through the music, so you should have the therapist salary.
Well, if you can work that out for me, I would greatly appreciate it. So.
Yeah, I'm sure the government listening right now, please send a check. That guy's the savior. But, thank you because you stick to it. And like, I'm happy that you're still making music, and trying a new thing, a new project. We need that. People had more time on their hands during the pandemic. A lot struggle mentally. We need music and we need words.
Oh, thank you. It's kind of funny because I think that I've actually done more interviews now that I'm doing more interviews as a podcast person. It's really interesting. I didn't really have many interviews with Weasel or with even a Blackouts. It seems to be coming from me being an interviewer that I become an interviewee.
It's so cool because there was a lot of podcasts, but I think people were interested of hearing those stories, and it's hard to find interviews from that era of times. And you doing that as a musician, as an artist, knowing, the behind scene, having people that you knew and meet up on the road or people that you wanted to have on the show. And it's cool. I listened to a couple of one, and it's a great podcast. It's such good question. And everything. It's a good vibe.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm really pretty proud of it. I do think it's like the next logical step in what I do because I'm always very curious about what other people are doing. And I think more as a collective than I do as an individual often. And as an artist, you often get caught in your own head, so it's nice to have this release where I get to be more social and think of other people besides myself.
Yeah, and normally, people would think that as an actor and as a musician, you're a social guy, and outside, those both worlds. But are you, or as me, I'm really shy person in normal days.
Yeah, no, I don't say I'm shy, but I'm definitely not very. I'm not overly social. I am around when I'm working on projects with other people, but I tend to be an at-home type of guy.
Yeah, me too. I really get you, and I realized way more during the pandemic.
Yeah. I know a lot of people struggled, but I actually seem to be doing a little bit better creatively within those confines. But I understand the difficulty that most people are having.
Yeah, and trying to change the negativity into something positive and creating is a good way. Are you working on an act right now? Will you play in an act? How's going to be, for you in that era?
Yeah, I have, Split Focus is the Jughead's Basement podcast. I do interviews every week, so that's ongoing and a lot of work. The Mitochondriacs, I'm conceiving now a one-sided album called One-Sided, which I'll probably start recording later this year. So.
Cool. And is there any way people can encourage you in those projects?
Encourage me?
Financial leads. Is there will be merch or something?
Yeah. Financially, there's always merch for Mitochondria, and financially they can help me out with the podcast just by going to my Patreon at www.jugheadsbasementpodcast.com. There's my advertising for the show.
Thank you so much. I have so much difficulties to say that word, Patreon.
Yeah,
Patreon.
Well, it's
Damn me.
I think it's easily confusable because you are gathering patrons, but the site is called Patreon.
Yes.
So that's the difficulty. Yeah.
You're right. And as a French guy, it's a really huge struggle. But thank you so much. Seriously, John, I love every project that you're involved in, and you're writing and everything. It's so cool, and can't wait to see the futures. And you came as many times as you want on our radio show. It's an honor, and congratulations with the podcast. Of course, we invite people to just go just give us support, subscribe on YouTube and everything where you can find it, and it changed everything.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, my friend.
John, thank you so much, and have a blast, and talk to you soon, man. And hope to see you around Quebec. Come visit us.
Oh, I'd love to. My roots are from Canada. My dad was never an American citizen. He's from Montreal, or was from Montreal. So I'm trying to get back up to Canada sometime.
Wow. Did he grow up a couple of years in Montreal and then live in the U.S., or?
Oh, he was in Montreal till his 30s, and then came down and met my mother, and then settled here for a while. But then when he got sick, he went back for medical reasons, went back to Canada. So he was still a citizen there.
Oh, I'm surprised we have the worst medical system out there. It's really bad.
Yeah, well, when you don't have money, it's not very good here either.
No,
so.
It's true. It's true. They said it's free here, but it's a totally lie. But the problem.
Yeah, well, there's taxes, large percentage of your taxes and stuff. Yeah,
we don't feel the money goes in the right end, if you know what I mean.
I got you.
So, John, thank you. And if you come as a repeat, just say hi and let's go drink a coffee or whatever. And thank you for your time and generosity. I mean it from the bottom of my heart. It means the world. And sorry for my mistakes since I'm French.
Well, that's a mistake in itself, I guess, if I want to be critical of French, which I'm not. It just seemed funny to say. But, no, you were a very good host, so thank you.
So let's go in 88 with a song called Hardcore EP. Do you remember 88?
I do remember 88. When we were doing Boogada, so I definitely have memories of 88.
John, thank you. I was 7 years old at that time. I'm 40 now.
Wow. Well, I'm older than that, so.
Yeah. But it doesn't matter. As you're young in your heart, that's all matters. John,
that is the truth. Yes.
You've been very generous of your time, and I appreciate it. Make sure I send you all the details for the podcast. We're live in the studio, but we have the podcast available right after the show. So thank you for your time. It was a blast, and thank you for the stories and everything.
Oh, you're welcome. Goodbye to you.
Let's do that again. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.
Hell yeah! Thank you, John. Screeching Weasel, a prescription punk rock. Hell yeah!
Who needs Day-Glow? Hey, not me. 27 morons living in a tree. These symbols keep going and stop beats. Half the time flipping out on LSD. Haven't seen non-violence, you don't know how to fight. Stupid unobjective cause you think you're always right. You go from freaking to yuppie in the blink of an eye. Think for yourself cause you're always fucking high. Peace out, smoke pot, that's the way, man. We all love each other, that's the way the world was planned. Wake up, throw it, something in your SLP. But nothing but I did it till it come back to me. Look at this guy. You're a sorry excuse for a long hair. You should be able to mosh with the best. S.O.D. S.O.D. O.M.Y. Who knows the lyrics? Because the lyrics are work.
Ben!
No, it's not work socks, it's work.
You missed one, Ben.
Yeah, he can't do it.